Imagine standing on the rotting wood of an 18th century galleon, staring out into a thick, impenetrable fog. You were a captain responsible for the lives of 100 men. In your trembling hands, you hold a map from the year 1711, a document hand-drawn in London and signed with the authority of kings. It tells you that just a few miles ahead lies a massive landmass called Isla de California, a paradise of gold, emeralds, and untouched riches. But as the wind clears the mist, you realize there is nothing but the endless crashing waves of the Pacific. Did the land simply sink beneath the ocean floor, or were you led into a deadly trap by a piece of paper that was never meant to be real? In the 18th century, maps were not just tools for navigation. They were the DNA of power. They decided who owned the world and who died trying to conquer it. But among all the artifacts of history, the 1711 Ghost Map by Herman Moll remains the most chilling example of human deception. This map convinced the entire civilized world that California was a floating island completely detached from the American continent. How could the greatest scientists of the Enlightenment era believe in a ghost for over 100 years? The roots of this geographical nightmare go back to the early 1500s. Spanish conquistadors were obsessed with a popular romance novel called Las Sergas de Esplandian. It spoke of a mystical island filled with gold and ruled by a warrior queen named Calafia. When explorers first reached the southern tip of Baja California, they were so blinded by the myth that they refused to see the reality. They didn't see a peninsula, they saw a dream come to life. For decades, the reports coming back to Europe were a chaos of misinformation. Some sailors claimed they had walked to the mainland, while others swore they had seen a great channel stretching to the north. But in the early 1600s, the Spanish government did something unthinkable. They officially ordered their mapmakers to depict California as an island. Why would a global superpower intentionally choose to believe a lie? The answer was greed, pure and simple. If California was an island, the Spanish could claim it was an entirely new continent under the law of the sea. This allowed them to keep the British and French pirates away from their secret pearl fisheries and gold mines. They turned a mistake into a political fortress. They were building a kingdom out of thin air. By 1711, Herman Moll became the face of this deception. He was the most famous cartographer in London, a man whose maps were considered holy by every sailor and merchant. In his 1711 masterpiece, he drew the island of California with such incredible detail that it looked impossible to doubt. He added mountains, rivers, and cities that did not exist. But Moll had never left his desk in London. He was drawing with the blood of sailors he would never meet. For a captain in the middle of a storm, Moll's map was their only hope. They would steer their massive wooden ships into the Gulf of California, expecting to find an open passage to the Pacific. But the water would slowly turn from blue to muddy brown. The waves would become shallow and violent, and suddenly the hull would crash against the jagged rocks of a desert that shouldn't be there. They were looking for a sea that was only made of ink. Can you imagine the silence of a crew realizing their map is a death sentence? History is filled with the ghosts of these sailors, men who died of thirst and scurvy while searching for a passage that was imprisoned on a piece of parchment. They believed the paper more than they believed their own eyes. They stayed in those treacherous waters for months, convinced that the channel was just around the next bend. They were chasing a mirage created by a man 3,000 miles away. But nature has its own way of betraying the human mind. This brings us to the terrifying phenomenon of Fata Morgana. In the extreme heat of the California deserts, the air bends light in such a way that it projects the image of water and cliffs onto the horizon. The sailors weren't just guessing, they were literally seeing ghost cities floating in the sky. How do you fight a lie when the very atmosphere is helping to tell it? It took one man of science to finally break the spell. Eusebio Kino was a Jesuit priest who didn't care about myths or Amazon queens. Between 1694 and 1701, he led 40 expeditions across the most brutal deserts on Earth. He walked until his feet were raw. He followed the dry earth until he stood at the very edge of the Colorado River. He saw the land of California merging into the heart of America. Father Kino sent letters to every king and university in Europe. He drew his own sketches, proving that California was firmly attached to the continent. He begged the world to stop sending men to their graves based on a fantasy. But the power of the printing press was stronger than the truth of the explorer. The ghost island remained on the maps for another 50 years because it was profitable. The mapmakers didn't want to fix their mistakes because it would mean destroying their expensive copper plates. The truth was bad for business. It reminds us that humanity has a dark history of choosing a comfortable lie over a dangerous reality. Are we still sailing toward ghosts in our modern digital world? Finally, in the year 1747, King Ferdinand VI of Spain had seen enough destruction. Too many ships were vanishing. Too many fortunes were being lost in the fog. He issued a royal edict that shook the world. He officially declared, "California is not an island." With a single stroke of a pen, an entire world was deleted from existence. But the legacy of the 1711 ghost map didn't die with that decree. It serves as a chilling warning about the power of information. In an era where we trust our GPS and satellites without question, we must remember that the person who draws the map controls the reality. Who is filtering the world you see today? Modern maps still have ghosts. Some governments erase secret bases from public view. Some maps include fake streets to protect their copyrights. We are still looking at a version of the world that is censored and edited. The fog of 1711 has not cleared. It has only become digital. The next time you look at a map, don't just see the lines. Look for the gaps. Look for the places where greed has overwritten the facts. Because out there in the silent corners of history, the ghosts of the 1711 map are still waiting for a ship that will never arrive. They are trapped on an island that never was. Will you follow the ink, or will you follow the truth? The ocean does not forgive those who follow a lie. Don't let the phantoms of the past lead you into the void. Look up from the map. Look at the real horizon, because the world is far more dangerous and beautiful than the maps will ever tell you.